Welcome to Conversations from the Barn at Everwood Farmstead. These are casual chats with visiting artists. Creaky barn, bugs, and all. Enjoy. Hey, welcome to Conversations from the Barn. This is Bill Underwood. I'm here with Chris Everett. And tonight we are chatting with artist Michael Hanna, who has been with us on retreat. This is probably the latest in the evening we've ever hosted an artist retreat. It actually might get dark by the time we're done. So welcome.
Twilight. Let's go. It's a Twilight zone.
It's a Twilight conversation. So Michael, to be honest, I don't know a lot about you. I haven't really looked through like your application materials, so give me some details.
I could tell you whatever I want.
Right, you can make it up.
I was on the committee, so
Okay. All right, so we have a fact-checking committee. I'm mostly an actor by trade. I act in Minneapolis and then kind of around the country, basically any place that wants to pay me a living wage with a project that I'm interested in. I think recently I've been transitioning, and especially over this last year, into more music. And music is like something I think I've had on the back burner for like a very long time. When I was a kid, I always wanted to be like a singer. And then theater is like super amazing and also very seductive. I think when you're a kid and you're growing up, there's a community that's kind of built into it. And there is one in music, but sometimes it's harder to find. So I think I kind of got tracked over to theater, and I've made a life out of it, which is really fantastic. And this year in COVID times has been kind of great in so many ways, like intense, really intense, but also really clarifying, I think, for working on the music that I've had for the last, like, kind of coming through me for the last, like, 7 years. And then fine-tuning that into, like, what's happening in the world. So that's a long explanation of like what I've been doing.
Yeah, there's a lot to dive in there.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of theater, so musical theater then, or?
Just mostly classical and contemporary. I went to the Guthrie program at the University of Minnesota. Mm-hmm. So that was ages ago, and graduated in 2013. Ken Washington kind of brought me in, and he's the big person, I think, for the early years of the BFA. Just a really discerning, magical human being that just, I think, really saw a lot of people's essence in a very short time.
I love that he says ages ago. We have like pasta in our refrigerator earlier than 2013.
Oh, shit.
But anyway, I digress.
It feels like ages ago. I mean, yeah, a lot has come and gone since then. But it's been Minneapolis is a great city for theater.
It really is, right?
Really, like, there's a lot going on in between.
And a supportive community, right?
Yeah, I would say so, yeah. And it seems like it feels like a lot of companies, and especially with like the Playwright Center, kind of like starting from there and then moving out, there's a lot of companies that are taking risks on shows that don't always don't go straight to production so quickly. It feels that way, that there's a lot of theaters that are like trusting their audiences with new, exciting work, as opposed to just going back to, I don't know, like a classic musical and then like a Shakespeare, and then maybe if you're lucky you might see a contemporary play that year. So it's a great city for that. It feels exploratory in a lot of ways.
Favorite production you've been in? In Minneapolis.
In Minneapolis, my favorite production I've ever been in, definitely Le Switch. I did a show at the Jungle Theater in 2016, which was a kind of a wild ride. I got a call while I was in Texas, and they were like, "Hey, Michael, we've had a change up with an actor. They're no longer able to do the production. Can you jump in?" I think I had to put something on tape, and then I basically got the part, and then I flew in the next day, and I had about, I think, 8-9 days to learn the role. And the role was like this like Quebecois speaking dual language person, so a lot of lines in like Quebecois French, and then on top of it, then just like a play to like learn in like 9 days before your first audience.
Wow.
I think. And then most of that time was also tech, so you're just kind of sitting around while they're figuring out how a turntable works, and you're kind of like, I'd love to rehearse the play, but it just turns into, it was magical though. It was like, there's something about just like a perfect storm, the perfect storm of it, of just like everyone being like, I don't know if this is gonna happen, but then kind of realizing that the part was like, in so many ways, like written for you, or like there's something about the part and you that is just very simpatico, and then on top of it a cast that's very simpatico, and it just kind of all came together in like a way that felt really like love, just like a lot of love. And then people also just like loved the play, and I think we won the Ivy for best production that year, back when the Ivies were a thing, and that was really cool. So it was just like one of those things where you're like, wow, I feel so lucky, and also so like loved by, I guess, where I'm at in my life. It just feels like really a lot of good fortune. So yeah, definitely that one. That one has a special. And then I got to do the play in New York too. I got to go to New York and do a reading in front of Terrence McNally, which was really incredible. I got to meet Terrence McNally afterwards, and that kind of blew my mind a little bit.
Yeah,
So
I bet.
yeah, that
bet.
would be the one that was it was a special
That
one.
was the one. I'm fascinated that composing is kind of a new thing for you. You have been working hard this week on the piano, and it's been a joy to listen to, and a special joy for us to hear the piano being used in that way. What's kind of your orientation to it, your inspiration from a genre perspective?
That's always a difficult question for me. I feel like my big thing in the last 3 years is just kind of feeling like a hack when it comes to music. I just don't feel like I have the training that a lot of people have, or people that went to music school or have been playing for their whole life. So for me, I got piano lessons when I was a kid, and then I would have them on and off. My dad moved a lot as a kid, so we were jumping all over the world. So I would take like a lesson, and then like 3 years later, I'd take another year of lessons. So a lot of it in the meantime was that I realized I just really loved to play, even though I wasn't getting like the training or like having someone kind of like coach me onward. So a lot of it just kind of came out of like having an ear. So I feel like there's a little bit of a mimic in me that I just kind of like glom onto things that I like. So a lot of it kind of, I think for me, I like really love like Philip Glass, like the sound of
Philip Glass.
just like minimalistic piano that has like a just cadence, like a mesmerizing effect. There's something I really love about the piano is that you can get lost inside of just the feeling of it if you use the pedal right, I guess. Or so for me,
people forget it's a percussion instrument.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Which Philip used to a very big extent.
Yeah. And yeah, I think if you can, especially with this piano too, which is exciting. I've been playing on a keyboard, an electric keyboard for however long, and it's just not the same. You can't get the percussion out of it. As hard as you bang on it, it's just kind of like, that's it. It like caps at a certain level, and you're kind of like, it's not giving back. It's not giving back to you. So I think, having
Whereas that little beauty in this space, it's given back.
It feels like an orchestra.
Yeah.
And the whole space,
In the
too,
whole
is
space.
part of it.
Yeah,
What are you
absolutely.
finding?
I
What is bubbling up for you?
I think I came in with this album that I'm working on, which is great idea to come in with something. I'm like, I'm going to work on this thing. It's going to be awesome. And I definitely have, but I had to kind of take a step back from it to find it. And I think something about having the real piano kind of helped me access a songwriting that's a lot less cynical. I think the last year I've been teaching myself guitar over the last couple of years, and that's great as a songwriting tool. But I think a lot of the stuff that I write, and especially with what's been going on in the last couple of years, has been really hard and surgical and like very like kind of just pulling apart like what I'm seeing and kind of hacking at it with like there's a more hard-edged like satire quality to it. And there's something about the piano that just kind of, it's hard not to feel personal with. There's something I think a lot more just a lot more compassionate about the instrument, or especially this instrument. And so I think for me, I think I started to discover that there was a softer side to this album that like it may start in a place of like cynical showmanship that then kind of bleeds away into something I'm working on now is like this song on the piano that has me meeting an alternate version of myself. My parents had a different name for me chosen out, and then at the last minute they were like, we're changing it. And there's kind of a mythology that I'm starting to kind of create around it. And then the piano is just kind of like opening that up into this like Angels in America moment. It just feels very soaring. So I think something about having a real instrument in a real space is just, I don't know, I feel like I've brought myself more to the work. And maybe that's also some of the solitude of it as well, of actually not being too afraid that, you know, my roommates will overhear or, you know, and there's something nice about having an audience, but not having one, or at least feeling that solitude is really, really opening in an intense way.
Needing solitude during the process, at least.
Yeah. And
The making.
yeah, at a place to just kind of write bad lyrics or lyrics that just feel like saccharine or a piano line that just feels like too emotional where you're like, well, no one's going to want to listen to this. This is like too lyrical, where you're just like, what music? This isn't music. Like, this isn't music anyone wants to listen to. And that's also okay. And I do think that's the beautiful thing about the piano is it's hard to translate into like a more commercial lens. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe something about this week is not really caring. There's something about it that I'm like, oh, this is just very beautiful, and I'm just going to pursue that, and then imbue it with things that are nasty or complicated that are inside of me. Yeah.
So you were working on 12th Night before
Yeah.
COVID hit. The show closes.
Oh, yeah.
Did your flirtation with music, was it happening prior to that point, or you probably didn't have a ton of time to...
I did.
Okay.
I did, but it was mostly through, I have a cover band. I have a cover band called Ready Freddie, and we do Queen music. Yeah. Which is
Love the
wild.
name.
And just like...
Ready Freddie.
Ready Freddie from Crazy Little Thing Called Love.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've been doing that we had our first show in February of 2019. So we had about a year before COVID hit, and
Okay.
we kind of just played the circuit of... Our first show was at Ice House, which was wild.
What a great space.
Yeah,
Yeah,
an incredible
for a
space.
first show.
And we thought we were going to be playing at this one bar that fell through because they double booked us, and I won't say who it is, but we were like, oh, that really sucks. It's awful. And we were really hurt. And then the guy, Michael Anderson, who is a great musician in Minneapolis, that his band Kiss the Tiger, they just played the grandstand at where is it? The State Fair. There it is. He was kind of like helping me get the band on its feet. It was his idea. He was like, I want to start this band. So he was like, he had a connection. He threw it their way. They happened to have the very day that we were going to play at this other bar open, and then they just threw us in. And it was huge. And it was like, you know, so many people showed up. There was like a bridal party there. And like, and I'm like sitting there and I'm just like, okay, I can do this. I think I can do this. I'm like a performer, which is great. So I have like I've cut my teeth a little bit on the stage, but there is something much more, it's just different. It's a different energy than acting, mainly because it's free form. You can do whatever you want up there, and especially if you're hitting the notes. And for Queen too, it's just like people love that music. I love that music. It's fun. It's operatic. It's absurd. It doesn't take itself too seriously, or it takes itself way too seriously, but in the best way.
It's luxurious.
Yeah. And the piano is like amazing.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like also the first time of like being like, I can teach myself this piano. I can sing these crazy songs and do the Freddie part. And then beyond that, something about the music just like opened up a side of me that was like, I've never experienced that before on stage. Not to say it's better or worse, it's just extremely different. And so doing that kind of pushed me back to my own music. And I was like, oh, I have actually all these songs that live in the zone that Queen often lives in. Some of it is just like super theatrical. There's like characters that kind of run through a lot of my music of like there's like a charlatan Gene Wilder type that's like kind of starting this album off, and it's just very like Willy Wonka, the cave of what is that? The Cave of Wonders or Terrors, or that frightening ride that he
Oh,
takes
right,
them on,
yeah.
and it's very much in that zone. But yeah, something about playing Queen, I was like, oh, you can do anything to some extent, and there's so much technique and theory inside of there as well. But it was freeing, I think, and then also just feeling that connected to an audience is wild. Yeah, it's a little bit of theater, it's a little bit of music. It was a lot of theater and a lot of music in the case of Queen.
With a name like Ready Freddie, there's got to be a little theater going on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And yeah, there's like two other vocalists that they do this. We have like kind of that full symphonic choral sound, which is really great. And then yeah, it's just like, I don't know, it's wild. It's a wild time. People get into it too. Just like, I don't know, they kind of lose their minds a little bit. It's very fun.
I'm curious, here in the midst of a long pandemic, when we've been disconnected from ice houses and crowds and all the rest of it, and some of us, many of us, kind of suffering into isolation, you find yourself in solitude on a farm for an artist retreat. I'm wondering about how this week has been for you and how it feels better or different than your time alone at home.
It's been great. I think initially I was going to come on this retreat with Isabella, who's a poetess, and one of my roommates, who's had a sudden spring of luck and is now making movies all over the country, which is great.
Yeah.
So I think there was a safety net in that, and we've been writing together. I think a lot of the way that we spent the year was like, I would write some music, Isabella would naturally hear it from the second floor. I was on the third floor, and she would write some poems, and then we realized that they were a little bit interconnected, that there was a commonality to them, I think just by the nature of osmosis between the floors. And so like a lot of the year was that, and then coming in I was like, oh great, I'll have Isabella, we'll just keep doing our thing, and we'll have separate time. And then Isabella had to drop out because of a film, and I was like, I guess I'm going to do this thing by myself. So I think to answer your question, I think it's been good for me because it's really not given me anyone to perform to, or need to, not even perform, but need to be accountable to. Mm-hmm. There's something actually about the lack of accountability here. No one's like hammering you for a deadline. And the beauty of making your own music in so many cases, until you're like famous, you have a manager or whatever, is that no one cares. Like no one, you could write music, you could not write music. No one, but there's something really beautiful about coming into the woods and then being like, oh, I think I'm supposed to write something. And then just kind of playing around and not trying to make it into something, and then just like listening to it. There's so much time to just listen to a song as it unfolds itself. And, you know, there's that classic story of like yesterday being like ham and eggs. And like there's so many songs that just kind of like start in that way. And you just, if you step away from it for too long or you put it down, it just stays ham and eggs. And you're like, oh, that's a stupid song that I wrote. It's all right. And then it goes away and disappears into your voice memo or never sees the light of day. And like here, I would just keep hearing songs that would like keep nagging me. So I would like write a little bit and I'd be like, okay, let's not beat this to death. And I put it down, I go for a walk or I change location, I'd like follow a deer into the woods. And then I come back and the songs, the bits that I would have written, the ones that needed to keep getting written kind of just made themselves known to me, which is really nice. And I think in the regular world, or at least in this last year, there's just so many things that can distract you. And just honestly maintaining your sanity can be a necessary distraction. And that's been good, but it's been special then to like have just space to, I don't know, have the songs just keep knocking on the door. It's been productive in that way.
You can answer when...
Yeah.
You can answer when you please.
You can answer when you please. And just like either be like, okay, I don't think it's time yet. I don't really know where to go with that. Or, okay, let me just play you a little bit more and see what comes. And it's been amazing watching things transform from the ham and eggs version, which is just you just like kind of blah, 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 ra-da-da-da, to finding what the song is more than just its lyrics inside of the shape and the chord. Yeah.
What's your orientation to nature?
I love nature. Yeah, I think I've always been pretty relatively comfortable with it, and I'm definitely comfortable being alone in it. I've had some wild times just like out in the woods or the jungle. When I was a kid, I lived in Indonesia for a bit, and my parents used to take us on these hashes, which is where they'd take shredded paper and then just kind of like lay a trail out through the jungle. So you would go on these wild little like meandering paths, and there's something about and that was a group thing, so it was like kind of very communal. They would give you a name after you'd done like 10 or 12 hashes. My name was Make No Sense as a child because I just blabbered all the time. But yeah, I don't know. I think I've always been really just like felt really safe in it, which has been really nice.
Wait, the name they gave you was Makes No Sense?
Make No Sense.
That's awesome.
I have a shirt somewhere. It's like much too small. Should turn it into a crop top. But yeah, it's like, yeah,
Why would you not wear something like that for a Ready Freddie show? Like, it sounds genius.
If I could find it, I'd have to talk to my mother and get her to like send it out.
Get her on it.
I will. It's a great
Seriously.
shirt from what I remember of it too. It's going to be
No sense.
very small. Yeah. Oh, I'd love to. I don't know. I just wanted to talk to everyone as a kid. And I didn't always have the words for it, apparently.
Just wanted to talk.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome.
We traditionally wrap our podcast with the same question, and so we're going to pose it to you, which is, how have you experienced beauty today?
I think today was really lovely. I woke up, I made a cup of coffee, and I like went about my day and was like kind of getting ready, pouring myself a little bit to wake up, and I sat down and I was like starting to think about what I wanted to do today. And then I looked out and there was like a deer just like outside of the window, just like foraging for an apple on the apple tree that's like right outside of the little cottage that I'm in. And I don't know, it was like beautiful to like look at the deer and like think about the deer doing the same thing that I'm doing, which is just being like,
Just having breakfast.
Need to get something in me before I
It's getting its caffeine in
die.
just a different way.
Yeah, a little bit of sugar, some of these natural, get the juices flowing. Yeah, and I think I just kind of like sat there and just like let him, her, them go about their way. And that, I don't know why, but it just kind of like slowed me down. And I think today I was like, oh, it's like the last full day. I gotta really make this one count. But I think the beauty of it, watching it, I was like, oh, this deer is going to, and it did, saunter off into its regular life, and it will keep going well past whatever I'm viewing of it. And the same thing is happening with this project. So I think for me, that was my moment of beauty, of being like, oh, I'm really just having breakfast. I'm just planting the seed of the long day or the tree that I'm growing, whatever these songs want to be. And I don't have to try too hard. It's already happening. The growth is happening. Just pour yourself some coffee and I guess keep going. So
She might have been watching you as well.
I know.
She might be talking about you on a podcast
That's
right
probably
now.
this
The
deer's
deer podcast.
existential moment.
I had this crazy day ahead of me.
Conversations
and I
from the den.
watched this young chap
Oh my God.
enjoying a cup of coffee, and I thought to myself, settle down, girl.
You
Settle
don't have to be
down.
anywhere.
You don't have to be anywhere. Oh my gosh, what a pleasure. Thank you for taking the time
Thank you both.
on your final day to chat with us.
We're
Thanks for
excited to
having me.
hear how your songs travel into the world.
Me too. I'm excited to see what that looks like.
Keep in touch and let us know, would you?
I will.
Send a picture of that crop top, please.
Oh, I will.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to Conversations from the Barn at Everwood Farmstead. Our theme music is provided by John Mark Nelson. Wishing you all good health.